Christopher, how you doing?
Really great. How are things there in sunny California, David?
It's hot. It's like,
Really?
yeah, it's 85 degrees still. It's
Well, here in the Midwest, it is approaching, late autumn, so we're seeing the big cool down. And as you can see, I'm wearing flannel now. And you can always tell when autumn hits the Midwest because all of the gay community in the region here, especially the lesbian community, they all grab their flannels. So
oh,
if you go down to Andersonville in Chicago this time of year, you see all the girls wearing flannel and ready for winter, which is kind of a humorous thing in itself.
yeah. Here the only way to tell it's winter is if you see some Christmas trees or Christmas lights. That's finally when it gets a little chilly here. I mean, it's literally been 85 degrees the last 3 days, and I was sick. So being sick in 85-degree weather, having to run my air conditioning while you're sick is not the greatest thing, but you know. Uh, I'm just so excited for this week because we have so much going on. We got an eclipse, we got a Mercury retrograde, we got a lot going on, and the sun switching over into Scorpio by the end of the week. I mean, there's a lot happening.
Yeah, it is kind of an action-packed week, I guess you could say. Although I think, as we were chatting before we started actually recording, I think a lot of the energy is almost like it's being on put on a holding cycle because it's building. And I think that this week we're going to see a lot of build up, and then over the next 3 weeks we'll see that surge forward as a lot of new energy is put into motion. And especially, like you said, we've got Mercury getting ready to retrograde. It'll be pulling things backwards for a while in our lives.
Yeah, there's a lot of weird energy shifting here. First of all, we start off the week right away, bam, lunar eclipse in Aries Libra. And it's been since 2005 since we've had an eclipse in this area of these two signs. So it's been a while since we felt this energy, and it is, the Libra story that we're completing here, this harmony, this balance in our lives, yet here's this big, powerful full moon that comes into Aries, which is very intense, very strong, very dynamic, looking at our ego, looking at our individual selves, very intensely, and all while we have a Saturn in Scorpio, a Mercury ready to retrograde, which is all very personal, intense, emotional energy, and it is connected up with Jupiter and Cancer, so it's very personal to each individual, I think, of looking at your own inner core, and I think that adjustment you talk about in the holding pattern, this has to deal with, like, very internal, personal space, and finding ways to maybe break free of an old self, come into more balance and harmony in your life, but it's on the extremes.
Yeah, it absolutely seems like it is very edgy, and it does have that sense of disorder. And I think that in part we watched Mercury-Saturn conjunct over the last 5 or 6 days here. And now Mercury is going to be going retrograde and going back in the direction of Saturn. And so we're going to be getting a lot of kind of like disciplinarian energy from those two commingling once again. And Mercury being in retrograde, it's going to be a process of relearning old life lessons that we perhaps have forgotten. So we're going to be put to task, I think. Things that you have been backsliding with are going to come back around again, and you're going to actually have to confront some things this coming week, and then especially for the following 3 weeks, because we're going to see that magical dance between those two elements, the Saturnian and the Mercurial elements in the chart. So, and this is again right in that region of aspecting Chiron over in Pisces. So it does open up trine energy, which is a big open flow energy, so the gateway to allow these forces to commingle within us internally in our consciousness. And as that starts to occur, deep and profound healings can come into our lives. simply because the universe is working with us to help us address these issues that we've been afraid to look at.
Yeah, we're going to have to confront a lot. Mars is opposing Neptune while all this happens. And Mars in Virgo, it wants to get things done. It puts us to work. It puts our reality into a very extreme energy. It's very crafty as well. You can make a lot happen when Mars is in Virgo. But as it opposes Neptune, I think this is confronting subconscious things, as you were discussing about. It confronts things from the past. It also forces you to make sure you're not escaping. Mars, as it opposes Neptune, there's so much to handle. And we could just want to escape it all, and there's this happy medium we have to find between both. And like you say, there's this opening up, though, with Jupiter and this Mercury retrograde, which is a very weird window that we're going to see a couple times here in the next, gathering of weeks, as Mercury will again trine over to Jupiter once more. So Mercury retrograde, I think the 3-week period is highlighting so much deep stuff, and it's all very personal. And with this lunar eclipse in Aries, with all this energy dealing with Scorpio, with all this energy dealing with this retrograde, inside there is huge readjustments to be made. And with Mars opposing Neptune, this is a time to confront the problems in your reality and listen to your gut, listen to spirit, and to put that action into gear here, but to be aware of your decisions and to be aware of your actions as much as you can be, especially as this full moon this weekend, which is going to be really intense in Aries. I mean, you want to make sure your ego's not too involved. You want to make sure you're paying attention to your actions. It's intense because Mars just moved into Virgo, and here's a full moon, a lunar eclipse in Aries. I think that increases the Mars energy even more so.
Oh, yeah, it definitely is adding a little extra juice there. And once again, as we're looking at, the interactions of all the planets and the placement of the planets, we do have to go back to the basics of astrology and put a little emphasis on that Virgo placement of Mars right now, because the 6th house in the classic chart, as we see it represented in all the basic layouts, is all about personal health and career. And as Mars moves into that 6th house, first we had that 29th degree of Leo, and that was right around the time frame you started to feel some health issues coming up. And a lot of people are going to feel this either as physical manifestations of things that you haven't been working with, or else they're going to see things happen in their career that is going to really have them have to stop and confront some things. Now, Mars definitely is an energizer, so if you've been working your career and really trying to, redirect all of your energy career-wise, you're going to see a huge surge of forward motion. And additionally, that equal kind of a activity in the area of personal health. You're going to be feeling energized. You're going to be wanting to get out and bicycle or run or swim. So this can really be the beginnings of a month-and-a-half cycle here of a lot of intensification in those two areas of our lives.
Yeah, it's really wanting to adjust so much because it's the small little dials that I think Mars in Virgo starts to adjust. Really specific ones in our life, in our body, in our routines, in our reality. So it's important for you to pay attention to the little things. It's important for you to pay attention to, the routine that allows your body to be the way it is. But what's so crazy is, Saturn's now moved past the shadow period, and here it is. This is digging into some deeper energy we haven't been to for a long time. And Monday, Mercury goes retrograde Monday. So, we really do start the beginning of the week after a really powerful lunar eclipse weekend, and then the moon in Taurus, which opposes all of this Scorpio energy, which can really kind of be a very weird weekend, I'll be honest. There's a lot to, sometimes the brakes could be on a little bit. There's this, but this need to push forward with all this Martian energy, but it is opposing Neptune. Like, really be cautious, be careful of what you spend your time and energy doing, and take your time, I think, is important. But I think it's Monday, then once the Mercury retrogrades, there's a lot to pay attention to now. There's a lot to look at deeply. This is also with Jupiter going to be at 20 degrees now. So Jupiter's not going any farther, and Mercury is hit 18 degrees where it's retrograded. We're not going to see much evolution in Jupiter anymore as it's at 20 now. And Mercury, it's going to take a while to get back to this 18 and move forward. So, you know, we really have this weird period we enter into Monday and into the week as Mars comes off of Neptune, and, you know, all the energy kind of finishes up this Libra transit and really wants to pay attention to some deep aspects of our life. And this is our desires. This is our truth. You know, and this moon moves into Gemini on Monday too. That makes things even more curious as it squares Mars as a Mercury retrograde happens. So that's why I think you have to pay attention to all of your actions over this whole week. I mean, it doesn't matter what's happening with Mars and what's happening with Mercury retrograde or what's happening with the moon, which I would say are some of the most powerful things to pay attention to in your reality. They're all making weird aspects all the way till we start to get into Tuesday. You know, finally then it's kind of like, okay, here's a little bit of a pausing or a lighter period. Does that make sense?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And you're spot on with that whole connectivity, because really we can't take an individual planet or an individual aspect and put too much emphasis on it. You have to look at the bigger picture of how everything is interacting. So you really very beautifully brought together the real big picture of how all of these different elements are trying to balance out in the heavens, and the heavens are actually within us. You know, this is the internal balancing process also. The thing I find kind of interesting in my little corner of the universe is I have a half a dozen friends who over the last 5 days have had to stop and buy new batteries for their cars. And, you know, I'm looking at Mercury as it trundles along and conjuncts Saturn, and their cars implode on them. And I thought, wow, this is interesting. Electrical systems seem to be going into a erratic mode, and people are having to make some catch up there. So a lot of times if you look at the basic nature of specific planets, you will get a clear vision of the events that are occurring in your life. You'll understand what it was that opened up that avenue, that kind of a revelation, and perhaps in the future be more alert to what's going on with batteries in your car so that you don't end up getting stranded in the middle of nowhere. But a lot of times that really is how we can use the activity of the heavens in practical application in our lives. So, you know, as we watch Mercury moving stationary for a while here over the weekend, it will essentially be just sitting there in limbo, and then it'll start to retrograde back on Monday, like you said. And as it starts to gain speed and hit Saturn again, you really want to stop and look at, you know, electronics in your life. Have you been failing to do the proper maintenance on your computer, for instance? You know, this would be a prime window of opportunity for viruses to infect your computer. You have your automobile, you have appliances in the home. I mean, there are a multitude of different ways that Mercury will affect your life in a very intimate way. And seeing Mercury have this conjunction with Saturn can indicate that it's time for you to assess what's going on with all these different elements in your personal day-to-day living experience.
Especially because there's a lot to learn off these. As Jupiter's trining this Mercury retrograde, it's been a long time since, I don't even know, I would have to do the research, since I've seen Mercury retrograde exactly in a trine with a positive aspect to Jupiter. It's been I can't even tell you when. I'm going to have to go back. I guess I know Mercury did some retrograding in Pisces earlier, but Jupiter was in Gemini then. There was a square. And then it did in Cancer, where it, you know, was actually connected with Jupiter, but not in a conjunction. So this is a really unique Mercury retrograde, I would say, as it's near Saturn, it's trining Jupiter, it's got the North Node in it, and Wednesday, as we're stepping into now, Saturn hits 17 degrees, and it's really starting to, it kind of comes off that stationary position, because that Monday, Tuesday retrograde is really when I'd say you got to pay attention to things, because that's when it's just stopped, you know? But it's so funny that Wednesday the sun comes into Scorpio. And I think this is going to be a huge hump of energy that we really start to see big time, because it's really gonna bring us to this deeper energy. And Mercury's here and Saturn's here. This is real sobering effect to get down to the bottom of things in our life, to understand these feelings. As I look at an ego that is breaking in our lives, as we finish this lunar eclipse in Aries, as we see Uranus and Pluto now making their really tight square, because Uranus comes to 9 degrees this week. So now it's square and Pluto hard. That, there's a lot of work. And Mars, starting to trine Pluto as the sun comes into Scorpio. I think we're going to feel intensity, especially because the day that the sun comes into Scorpio, then the moon trines it in Cancer. So there's going to be a whole lot of water going on. I mean, this thing is going to be, we're going to jump off the cliffs into the deepness Wednesday, I believe. And Saturn's at 12, and the Mercury retrograde's now really enacted. And this is a really weird roller coaster this week. I mean, wow.
Yeah, and especially, once again, as I keep reiterating, when you go back and look at the placement, the activity of Cancer in the 4th house is bringing stuff into your home, into your living environment. So it can definitely have an effect on activities going on in the home and on personal things that you have in your home. And you have to look at all of that. And then when we look up on the upper level, we have that 10th house activity of Pluto in Capricorn in a very stressful aspect to Uranus in the personal ego's house in Aries, in that 1st house. So as we're looking at that interaction, we're recognizing the potential here for governments, which is that 10th house region, and Pluto in the home of the governments right now, having a negative impact on the individual, the 1st house, the ego, the personal self. So this dynamic, to me, would suggest that for the next couple of weeks, we're going to see people very unhappy with their governments, whether it's in the United States or in Great Britain or in Dubai or just, anywhere around the planet. I think a lot of people are really going to be ready to, pull the plug, vote in a different direction, get rid of the congressmen, overthrow the principalities that they're living underneath. So we could see some global activity as far as individual people rising up against governments. And of course, in the past, we've seen this action take place, especially in the Middle Eastern area and Egypt especially. So I'd keep an eye on those regions. And for people who may be traveling, you might want to be sensitive to the fact that there could be uprisings going on. And be cautious where you land if you're taking a journey to the Middle East.
Yeah, because in many ways, this is the breaking down of rules, the breaking down of structures and governments. And, I think that we all have to find trust. All this is trust. The sun now in Scorpio this week, North Node, Saturn, Mercury, that we're really trying to understand is trust, to receive in our lives the life that we want, that we feel that we deserve, because this Taurus, energy is involved, because the node is in Taurus as well. This is dealing with what we want, what we deserve in our lives. And if we look at the powers of control, because really the governments are control, as Jupiter's opposing this new expansion of comfort, that, this is a balance between your trust and your ability that you don't need these things of control, that you can find comfort in maybe your own self, maybe you can provide. This is testing people's trust and trusting that they could break free of that limiting relationship, trusting you could break free of that limiting job, trusting you can break free of all these, reliances in your life that seem to be comfortable for yourself. And in many ways, when we start to see governments and things not working out, even though there's people mad as hell, there is still this fear that they can't live without them, which is the truth that you're going to have to see that you can handle it on your own, or that even if we want to identify the collective can do it on its own. You know, these are deep fears that we're dealing with in Scorpio. These are deep fears we're dealing with Pluto-Uranus square. So it's like, I think you're dead on the money, especially with this government stuff. It's control too. I mean, it could be a law that gets in between your face now, and you're just so upset with the law, you know? So you're gonna break the law, or you know, any factor control. If this relationship's been controlling you, you know, Venus is going through Sagittarius in a very open energy throughout this week, really opening up our ability to manifest things, opening things up in our relationships, our value systems. I think it's important to pay attention to the powers of control and to make sure that you're open to finding your own power into overcoming those systems, overcoming those laws, overcoming those systems of control, but also finding comfort in your ability to take strength in finding that new road.
Exactly. And in addition to that, you know, looking at that placement of Jupiter in the 4th house, once again, we are looking at situations in our personal living and our family living space. You know, and again, that's that polarity between the 4th house of the home and the 10th house of government and the external world. So once again, a lot of energy is going to be available to us to transform things in our nest, to transform the way relationships are working for us personally. So we could come out of this with a much stronger sense of family identity, a much stronger sense of house and home and hearth, you know, and we're moving into Samhain, into that period of the harvest, and then the period of Thanksgiving and the holidays after that. So we could see a lot of very positive things occurring in our dynamic, in our home environment and our family environment. And I think that's really what's going to carry us through with this exterior stress that's going on in the outer world, is that we can go home and feel nurtured, feel safe, and feel like we have got support so that we can get up the following day and go back out into the world and be able to survive whatever conflict we have to address.
Yeah, and there's a lot of conflicts to address in our own lives. We can be that much better. And, you know, now that all this energy is in Scorpio, this has to do with financial institutions. This has to do with finance. This has to do with money. You know, it could be difficult for money right now, and that could test you in your trust as well. It could test your trust. It could test you taking new roads this week that test your courage and your trust at the same time. Also, while we're looking at the home, you know, I think it's a weird balance between security and, you know, the work you got to put in. It's a very fine line, you know, especially as we're dealing with finances, we're dealing with trust in this energy, we're dealing with governments, we're dealing with your home. I mean, this can be difficult, but I think the way out is in your emotions, finding comfort in whatever situation by trusting. I think that's part of the lesson we will learn with this Saturn. I mean, this Mercury-Saturn conjunction of the retrograde as it all trines over to Jupiter is trust in your foundation, trust in your emotions, trust that security will be given to you by the universe, by spirit, that it will all work out okay. Mars and Virgo, I think we're going to see everybody trying to nitpick or fix every little thing in the way they want to do it. Like, no, adjust it 5 times more in order to make sure that I won't make money unless you move it that way or if you paint it purple. And blah, blah, blah. I mean, people can get crazy. It's like, I think there's a lesson behind all this, that trust, surrender, let spirit bring it to you. Follow your gut. Follow your senses. You know, this is sixth sense training is the way I'm looking at this in many ways.
Exactly. And the interesting thing is, as we see the sun advance from Libra, which does have trust issues, into Scorpio, which has even more trust issues, we're obviously going to be seeing a spike of self-doubt and a spike in people not trusting their own interior voice and their own sense of better judgment. So really, meditation is going to be one of the key elements over this next 10-day passage that will get you through and will give you the foundation to move, as I was speaking earlier, into the holiday season with a lot more confidence. I really find it interesting how, as this pileup is starting to build in the sign of Scorpio, we're going to see the opposite side, which is, our personal values, our personal finances, being the recipient through the activity of that node in Taurus. And then we're going to see, how the how the influences of other people's money and legacies and all of the Scorpio energy is going to impact us personally. I think a lot of people are going to have serendipitous experiences of unexpected gains coming into their life if they are doing their work with the karmic lessons that are going on. Because again, the nodes are all about karma, and the nodes are now placed in other people's money, Scorpio energy, and personal money, second house Taurus energy. So it is going to be, again, a very magical dance between the houses as they appear in the classic layout of the chart.
You're right, especially karma. I mean, now that the sun's come in, and it's building towards a solar eclipse after this, this week after this lunar eclipse happens this weekend, and we come into the week, it's eclipse season. And so talk about fate train. I always do that. All my people know fate train, woot woot. It's like, it's coming into town. And all through this week and the next week, and with Mercury retrograde and all this fate and North Node stuff happening, and trust though. I think trust and pay attention to what you commit to. Scorpio's commitments. So there's a lot of commitments to be made, trust that we need to find. And people, past life relationships become crazy this week because everything's dealing with all this energy, and Venus is trying to open up doors while karma's all over the place on a fated week in between eclipses. Yeah, this brings a lot.
Yes, it definitely it is happening. One of the things that I remember when I first started paying attention to eclipse activity was I was living in the Pacific Northwest, and we had a total solar eclipse. And I remember that process of the light diminishing, and not so much the eerie feeling that I was having at the time, but how all of nature all of a sudden started to slow down and then stop. And all the birds stopped singing, they stopped moving around in the sky. There was a definite sense of everything coming to a halt. And I've observed that energy since then with every both solar and lunar eclipse. You will notice that night birds will not fly during a lunar eclipse. You will notice that you won't hear birds singing during the day during a solar eclipse, and especially if you're directly under the effect of those eclipses. So I think part of the lesson of the eclipse is to stop and listen and look, and to be still for just a few minutes. It's not like the universe is saying spend this whole day in seclusion. But for an hour or two, it's really a good idea as we go through an eclipse cycle to find a place where you can go and be still and just allow yourself to observe. And then as you come out of that stillness, you'll start to feel like you're more integrated and more able to participate on a much higher and wider level.
Yeah, and I think the stillness is important with a Mercury retrograde in Scorpio, conjuncting Saturn, trining Jupiter. There's a lot to pay attention to. Plus, with Mercury and Saturn close in Scorpio, it's good to take your time to process. It's good because you start to trickle down to some deep energy. We're going to the bottom of the barrel. That's what Scorpio is. It really doesn't care about the fluff at the top. It wants to know what's at the bottom. It doesn't care about anything on the surface. It wants to know the bottom of things, the deepest aspects. And in many ways, with these eclipses, with all this happening with Mercury, with all this happening with Jupiter, there is, well, I look at Jupiter as like the big trophy, or I guess you could say the big bottle of candy, or however you want to look at Jupiter. The abundance is in us taking our time to process, by us going to the bottom, by us paying attention to so much of the energy. And with all this grand trine and water that happens this week, I think you're right. There is this you need to see behind the curtain, because that's is what's dictating your outer world. So why waste your time? Mars in Virgo is not wasting any time in the reality either. So it's like that's what makes it difficult. It's a test of that sixth sense for sure.
Right, and then I think we'll see the rewards come as a result of our efforts at the end of the week, because we start all of this activity out with the full moon on Friday. We see the Mercury retrograde on Monday. We see a lot of different planetary interaction all week. But then if you watch what's going on, the moon is advancing, advancing, advancing. And so next Friday, a week from this weekend, you're going to see that Moon-Jupiter conjunction. And that's feeding that trine. That's feeding things going on in your personal relationships and family and home. And so this following weekend could be a huge weekend for reaping rewards. So, you know, it's kind of like playing that one machine at the casino and being patient with it, and then all of a sudden, ka-ching, and then you drive out with a brand new Camaro. Whoopie-doo.
You know, I think we should go to the cards, but I want to end with this, that it's so funny that you say that. On my 21st birthday, I went to the casino, and I wanted to go gamble, and it's the only time I've ever like won a bunch of money, and it was of course maybe beginner's luck, but I think you're right in like, you know what, it was the energy I put to that. Everybody will think I'm crazy, but I went around saying positive vibes, and I would like rattle the machine, positivity, and I won lots of money, like, because it was behind the machine. I was pushing that positivity. Now, you'd think I'd go do that now, but I never have done it the way I did it when I was 21, because I was so excited for it. I was really wanting to connect with that energy, and I think it's important to hit this jackpot in our life by you connecting, by you not, with Saturn in Scorpio, it'll test you, you know. Capricorn is a test all the time, and whether or not you're good at connection. Scorpio's connection. Can you push through and trust in your connection and give it your everything? It's 100% or nothing with Scorpio. And that's what we're going to see, I think, in this next, really 6 weeks. Because even though the Mercury retrograde's 3 weeks, then it's got to catch all the way back up, and then it's got to come out of all that. And this is also while the sun's coming through Scorpio and hitting Saturn and hitting the North Node and then hitting Mercury as it's got to pass, right? I mean, this is a 6-week deal. Jupiter goes retrograde in November, that first week. So this is a big deal. I don't think until Mercury comes out of Scorpio, which I know is at the end of November, that we're really going to pop out of this period we're about to step into.
Exactly, and that you know, again, brings us right into the holiday season. And I keep saying, I think the holidays are going to be very, very good for people. I think that all the trials and tribulations that we're going to have to confront are coming at, and they're coming at us very rapidly. And like you said, we always have to watch the shadow. It's enough to observe the actual events as the progressions are occurring, but then there's that redundant cycle where the shadow has to be addressed also. And so we're really going to see the shadow revealing a lot to us and making changes in our universe after these series of events. And like you said, it's going to be a 6-week process, very intense 6-week process. So for the cards, well, pardon me, we have got me out of control with a damn card here. This is a 6 of Cups, and this is Friday. This full moon coming, or this full moon in Aries. Very personal full moon, I think. And the 6 of Cups is about personal relationships, intimacy, friendships, your childhood, things like that. So you may be noticing this weekend, this full moon will feel a little bit more personal than the last few full moons have felt. In the past, you were feeling perhaps more out there in the world, or more surrounded and part of participating with, you know, a bigger phenomenon that was going on around you with the full moon. This one is going to really hit home. It's going to be very personal, very deep. And as we hit into that Sunday, Monday period, we're kind of doing a retrograde, very much like Mercury. We had 6 of Cups, and now we have the 5 of Cups. So there will be a tendency to go back and cling to the past, to review things, to you know, maybe have a little bit of a pity party for ourselves, and address some of the old wounds. Chiron in Pisces, you know, with the wounded warrior, the wounded healer. So the wounds are going to come up to the surface, and we're going to have to address them on Sunday, Monday, Tuesday. But look at the energy we'll be working with. And this is that, even though this is an air sign, the Queen of Swords, it has a very Aryan kind of nature. So we have the Sun finishing up its passage in Libra, and we have the Moon over there in Aries saying, suck it up, guys. It's time to move forward now. We've had a couple of days to feel sorry for ourselves or feel sorry for lost opportunities. So then, as we advance next week, we're going to see a big breakthrough. We're getting a lot of cups and swords up here, too. We've got the Nine of Swords. And if you look at this, there are 9 swords, but where are they placed? They're behind the person. And the person is in that process of awakening. So the nightmare is over. The dream is finally coming to an end that was stressful or difficult or unpleasant. So Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, we have that awakening, the realization that everything that we feel like we didn't get from the past perhaps would not have contributed to our own future. Sometimes it's good not to get what you want in order to go through the growth process and to accelerate forward. And so toward the end of the week, we have the 8 of Pentacles. And this is a card of the student. And we're bringing all of this stuff that we have learned in this passage of the last 5 days down to a basic fundamental level of reality. This is a reality school. And this is where we learn our lessons by engaging in the process of life. So the 8 of Pentacles will carry us into this coming weekend. The cards were not as jazzed up as we normally see. I would have thought we would have had more major arcana with this full moon. But the reality is it's a very personal, very intimate process that's going to be going on. And that's why we're not getting all the sparkles and, you know, fluffy stuff with this coming week. It is deep inner work. And if you're doing the work, it is going to be a very successful ride.
It's very Mars and Virgo, the little things, you know, like those I think give more specific. Major arcana can kind of be very general and big and powerful, so it's like overpowering. But those cards you picked are very specific into adding more of the specifics of what we're seeing through this week. So, what a way to slip into Libra Scorpio. The best way to describe Libra into Scorpio is, you know, when you see the sunset at night, that's that Libra energy. But the second the sun falls and it's light to dark, it's Scorpio. And you are aware when it's dark. I mean, that's when the bugs come out and bite. That's when you need to, like, find light and shelter, bring the food in, bring things in, you know. This really retreats us inside deeply. And so we deal with the dark of the night. Plus, you know, this is a crazy time, you know. I think what you've harvested over the end of this summer and everything kind of, well, let's see what you brought in your bag or brought in your house with what you harvested in this life. That's why it's kind of important to pay attention to awareness and consciousness, because, you know, those that are unconscious, you'll see in these next 6 weeks the reason why they might be and how unconsciousness really does suck.
Well, I think the big thing is that normally our dialogue tends to be much more rah-rah, sis-boom-bah kind of thing. And this is getting down to the nitty-gritty, and that's what you've been talking about with all of the different dialogues you've had with people over the last 6 months. And occasionally I've done a few videos too, and we're all pinpointing this period, this timeline, as being very significant as to what we are going to be experiencing, not only in 6 weeks from now, but in 2 years from now. So we are at a very pivotal time, and some of the information may seem a little bit daunting, but the reality is it's better to be aware and to be empowered than to live in a state of being blissed out to the point where you're not addressing things that need to be addressed. So, and we really appreciate all you guys who pass the information along, who share our videos, because the purpose of our having these dialogues is to give people a little bit of a torch in the darkness. As David had mentioned, we do go through dark times and we need some illumination, and that's what our dialogue is all about, is bringing some light into your personal world. So share that light.
And that's in many ways what Scorpio is about. It's extreme dark and extreme light. It's the both, and this is rebirthing energy. But in many ways, to rebirth, you've got to go into the dark first to come into the light. And so even though Scorpio can be fearful and scary, just like on Halloween, the truth is, when you get over that fear, or after you go through the scare, you laugh your butt off because you're like, oh my gosh, that got me good, or oh my god, that's what was the problem. Finally, I can get rid of this. Finally, I'm aware. The intensity can create in positive ways, and I think that's what it always leads up to, because Scorpio is more than just a scorpion. It is an eagle that flies, and ancient astrology always had that as the eagle. And I never forget that with Scorpio. And if you look at Scorpios, sure, you can see that dark side. But I always can see that eagle, too. There are some bright, bright, bright Scorpios out there. And you can see those eagle eyes. You can see that eagle pointed nose, like an energy. And it's very like, woo! And this is fixed energy. Remember, this is going to be the meat and potatoes of the fall. That's why it's the fixed sign. So this is dealing with our personal needs and wants intensely.
And things that we've put into placement that we're having to learn how to live with. Because, again, it's not what others are doing to us, it's what we're doing to ourselves. And Scorpio is big on teaching us that lesson.
Oh, yeah. Well, thank you, everybody. And it was great to connect with you again, Chris. I think we had a great, great report.
Yeah, it was excellent, and I'm sending you that healing vibe so that next week you can go zipping around the West Coast.
Yeah, I leave Monday, so on Mercury retrograde. But, I will be up in Northern California and up into Portland, Oregon. So.
And you're going to have a great trip because you are doing the work. You're not leaving a lot of back doors open, so. Being mindful of the movement of the universe is what makes it happen.
Yep. Well, thanks, Chris. And again, another great report, and I will see you next week.
Sounds awesome. Take care, David.
Bye.
Bye.